everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Shift Happens. I am joined by Cath, Daina and John for this episode, and we are looking through what does support really look like for those who support everyone else. So we'll start with a quick introduction. I am obviously Pete from Flourish. I'm head of partnerships, and I'm joined by Cath. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi Pete. I'm Cath. I'm from the Co-workers Charity. I've worked in the third sector for about 20 years plus. I joined the Co-workers Charity about 3 years ago, initially working in the grants area, so directly working with co-workers applying for grants, and then now I actually work in the trust and foundations section, so I'm responsible for trying to bring in funding to support co-workers who are applying for grants.
Amazing, thank you. And Daina?
Thanks, Pete. My name is Daina and I work within the grants team for the charity. I've been with the charity for about 4 years now. I oversee applications for both our financial grants and our mental health wellbeing programs. My role is really about making sure care workers can access timely support when they're going through difficult times, whether that's financial pressure or challenges with their mental health.
Amazing, thank you. And last but by no means least, John.
Hello, my name's John. I've been a care worker for 20 years and I've worked in various settings of domiciliary care, supported living and care home settings, and I've been helped by the Care Workers Charity in the past, and I've really been grateful for all the help that has been provided to me, and I'm quite happy to talk about my experience.
Amazing, thank you all. So we're going to explore a few different things today. So for me, first question, and happy to whoever wants to come into this one first, is I'd love to know an example of someone, whether a care worker or yourself, who received support that genuinely made a big difference. Who wants to come in on that one first?
I'm quite happy to start off with that one.
Go for it, John.
I became a care worker through circumstances really outside of the care world, just a caring responsibility that meant that my career path altered substantially, and care work was the only way that was for me to be able to have a flexible working pattern. I entered into that, and I did that for many years, and was getting on with it and living on quite a low wage. And the main problem I had was that my washing machine died, and my care responsibility required me to do an awful lot of washing. I just didn't have the budget to replace it, and so my life sort of went on hold. I applied for some support from the Care Workers Charity, and they basically enabled me to buy a new washing machine that basically meant I could carry on with my life, and it stopped me from having a lot of stress, worry and concern, and something so simple really did enable my sort of stability in life and things to go on. And for me, it was life-changing. It was very reassuring, and it sort of did help me flourish and being able to help me keep working and not basically burn out with stress and worry.
That's amazing, John. And I guess, you know, it's that little thing that it's something we don't always all plan for, is the washing machine breaking
I would
down.
say, as a care worker, you're capable of dealing with massive, big things happening at short notice, and you can roll with it. And it really is the little things, and it can be as simple as a simple act of kindness towards you, or a simple word, or someone saying to you, "Are you okay?" that can help you get through the day and through difficult periods in your life. So I would say to flourish isn't just a financial thing; it's sort of a mental thing, to feel valued, to feel that someone is actually looking after you. And I must say that the people I work with are amazing, and I've had successive managers that really sort of gone the extra mile. So it is actions as well as thoughts that do really count in the field, in my opinion.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think you're right, John. I think it's the fact that we try and intervene quickly, but also try and have that personal approach, because everyone's different, and the fact that you've reached out for help means that you need that help as quickly as possible, and that's what we try and do.
Well, I would say that I think the Care Workers Charity was the only place I found that I could actually get any help. And when I contacted them, they were completely non-judgmental, very supportive and very encouraging. And it wasn't just a one-off help. It was like, come back to us if there's anything else you need, which I did subsequently for some sort of counselling support and things like that. So it's not just a one-off thing. It really is a lifelong support, which I think they do offer. And, I don't think they get enough sort of recognition of that, because I think it's really important. And the work that you obviously do in the organisation really does have a real effect on the way in which care workers are very much on the edge of society, very isolated, live pretty much on a very minimal sort of wage. A lot of care workers are paid minimum wage. They do an awful lot more than they're contracted to do, and I think the depth of work is sort of something which does get taken for granted. But I do think that this support that's offered is very important. I think I froze there for a minute, sorry.
That's okay, John, that's no problem. Washing machines are a nightmare, and I think back to the conversation Carolina and I had first on the first episode with COVID and everything that happened there. My wife, every day, straight into the house, strip down, clothes into the washing machine, washed, and then wash herself, shower, etc. And without a washing machine...
That's very true. I mean, like, COVID was a big, massive event that, you know, I think is fading, but you say there, every shift you'd come home, you'd have to wash your clothes, you'd have to make sure that you'd laundered them, tumble-dried them, and that was another expense and another reason why things do wear out. You know, you take it for granted, but I do think it's these things that are really important to realise and acknowledge that, you know, something so simple is something which can sort of, like, disrupt your life.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we come across quite a lot in the for grants is people that are struggling with MRTs and car repairs, things like that, that would normally just be an inconvenience to some people, but actually to a care worker, it's essential.
It is, I think, for things like motor vehicles, it's very important that these things are acknowledged, not taken for granted. That having a car when you're doing domiciliary care is vital and expensive.
I think one example that's always stayed with me was when a care worker came to us during a very difficult and challenging period in their life. They sadly lost their baby and had to take some time off work, so they were living on statutory sick pay. This meant that they were already struggling financially, and on top of that, they were facing the cost of arranging a funeral. They felt this huge amount of guilt that they couldn't afford to give their baby a send-off that they wanted, while also trying to keep up with their rent, their utility bills, and not fall further into debt. So we were able to step in and provide some financial support towards the funeral cost, which really helped relieve some of that immediate pressure. But just as importantly, we also offered counselling sessions because the emotional impact of something like that is huge. So what really stood out for me was that it just wasn't about money. It was about giving that person a bit of space, a bit of time to grieve without the added weight of financial stress.
I'm lost for words with that, you know, how do you cope with something like that? And, you know, panicking, I can't afford the funeral. No one should be in that position at all. And it's really sad that it got to that point. I'm just really pleased that Care Workers Charity were able to step in and help there, because, you know, I really feel for that person. And yeah, that's just completely, I'm lost for words with that. I really am.
But the thing is that these type of challenges and situations, they're not rare. They happen more often than people realise. And it is sad. It's because whenever we talk about financial stress or financial pressure, that it's an added layer. And when you have a lot of financial pressures, when you're going through something so emotional, it really takes a toll and detriments an individual's mental health as well.
I'd agree with that. I think it's something which is not really acknowledged massively, the amount of life things that happen and people just keep going. And that is at detriment to their health, well-being, their mental health particularly. And I think such awful life events such as that, you know, put a lot of things into perspective. There's a lot of people that do Karen each day. I think I heard a quote that said, "Be kind to everyone because everyone's fighting a battle," and I think that's something that's very apt for everyone's situations, their own mountain to climb. So I just think that's really sad and tragic.
I think co-workers tend to be resilient people, so they carry on where they can, and by the time they reach out to us, sadly, a lot of people are really desperate. They've usually reached out to friends and family first and exhausted other routes. And yeah, I think, like Daina said, it's not a rare thing for us to come across people that are in a situation where you just can't believe they're still standing, never mind carrying on and still working and holding everything together. So yeah.
I'd support that. I think when you're in crisis, I think you lose objectivity and you don't rationalise the situation. Perhaps if you were telling a friend, suggestions of how they could do something, I think you stop that sort of rationality. And I think when you do reach out and someone does say, yes, we can help you, the sense of relief is, I don't think it can be measured. And I think all the work that the Care Workers Charity does, I think, is very much underplayed in the value that it brings to the well-being of a lot of people. And I know there's facts, figures and statistics, but I know that when they supported me, they really did save the situation, ultimately changed my life. I really did have nowhere else to turn.
That's amazing. I think care workers are hugely resilient people. I've said it before. They are and John, this goes out to you as well. You are a special breed of person. Carolina said she kind of. We were talking about heroes last time, and for me, care workers are heroes because you are doing things that I couldn't do. I'm not the type of person that can do that, unfortunately. That's just not the way I'm built. But you are hugely resilient, and I come back to my wife again, who is exactly like that. She will take the weight of the world on her shoulders, and all the rubbish that I put on her as well. And she's just it's there. It is what it is, and we just keep going. So she is as I said it before, she is my hero, and she just keeps going. But she won't tell someone when she is struggling. You really have to keep questioning, keep digging, get into the answer and say, I know you're not okay, so tell me what's going on. What do you need? What can I help you with? So thank you all for that. That's brilliant.
I'd support what you're saying. I sort of summarise it with, I don't think you can write a job description for a superhero, but I think being a care worker must come close, because I know the people I work with are absolutely amazing and outstanding and bring the quality of life of people that need care as always at the forefront of everything they do. And I don't think it's something they get recognised for, they don't get paid for, but they still do it.
No, I don't think it's recognised. Well, we know it's not recognised. We know care workers aren't recognised. Let's talk about there's strikes going on for the NHS at the moment. If carers went on strike, carers wouldn't go on strike because they care about the people they support. So we can't just go, actually, do you know what? Today's not going to happen. We're not doing it. We're all going to Parliament to protest, and everybody's stopping all care, because they won't do that.
I'd agree with you. They don't opt out. They step up, and they step up every single day, every single shift. When they're not 100%, when they've got other things happening in their life, they still turn in and they still do the job.
But I think this is where that resilience, that dedication then gets overlooked by the majority, which is why there isn't that recognition for them. There isn't that support for them. And I think that's where we need to sort of step back, reflect and recognise care workers are people too. They are vulnerable people too, going through the same scenarios, the same challenges and the same situations that everyone else will be going through.
I'd agree with you on that. And I think there's the current issue of the immigration status of workers with the permission to stay. That's been altered. So I think they're an easy target for political manoeuvrings, that people do come to do a very difficult job in this country, and I don't think they're treated very nicely, and I think that they aren't being treated nicely, and I think that's something that is obviously going on in the press, but I think it's probably something that will be coming more to the fore in the near future, because immigration and things is very topical, but there's a lot of people that come and do an excellent job that work for very little and currently not being treated very fairly by the system.
Definitely. So actually, that leads us quite nicely on. So, really keen to know, how could we work towards a system where the kind of support is in place for everyone?
I would I would say that there's a large workforce which I think is very much isolated individually. If it could be brought together and be representing sort of like the hundreds of thousands of people that work in care, I think you'd find there's a massive voice there, and that representation, I'm not talking about unions, I'm not talking about anything political, because I'm not quite sure that's the right forum, but it's to say there's people doing an amazing job that work very hard and need recognition and more support for the wonderful job that they do.
Do you think a care worker registration would fill that need, John? Do you think?
Yes, I do. I do agree with that, and I think it's one of them things. It's a bit like the NMC or the Doctors Registration Board. They're represented and they have a lot of clout in negotiation for pay and conditions. And I think you can see from the junior doctors' strike, they shut up shop and got a 35% pay rise, but that still wasn't enough. I think they were hanging out for more. Nurses pay a registration fee and have to adhere to a lot of regulations. Care workers don't have that, but with that, the flip side is they don't have the representation, they don't have the voice. I would say a recognised national body to represent care workers, their interests, but also the other way to regulate things like training and standards and suitability and traceability between jobs would be very, very useful and good for the industry. So I would say a national care workforce registration board would be very useful.
I mean, when you talk about an ideal system, support like this wouldn't rely on charity stepping in at crisis point. There should be stronger safety nets built in, things like better sick pay, more accessible to hardship supports, or even clearer pathways to access mental health services. And then there's also that layer of collaboration, employers, government, and even organisations like ourselves. We all have some form of role and responsibility in making sure people know what's available out there and that they can ask for help earlier on and not sort of reach breaking point or that crisis.
I do agree. I think the Care Workers Charity are very good at signposting support that's available, support that they offer, or signposting to other organisations. I think it's probably underutilised, and I think that's probably down to there's not enough public awareness, or there's actually not enough awareness in the industry of the support and the wonderful work that the Care Workers Charity does. So I think having some form of unified body registration, however it would be put together, would be very useful, because I think you might be things like pay and conditions, sick pay, contracts, pay negotiations. That's all very fragmented. It depends where you are in the country, who you work for, and who represents you. And I'm not sure the political aspects of something I understand. I don't really understand the doings and froings, but the Fair Pay Agreement, I think, has been scheduled to take place in about 4 or 5 years. But I think the cost of living is something that's here now. The minimum wage has gone up, but not massively. I mean, everything else has gone up. So I do think it's something that does need to be coordinated. And I do think the Care Worker Charity is doing something which no other organisation is. And I think they've reached a lot of people, but I still think there's a lot more people still to be reached and helped.
Yeah, I think joined up thinking, an approach where, like you said, we've got a lot of partner agencies and organisations that are out there, but it's getting that sort of joined up action. I mean, we've got some really great employers, but we've got some employers who could do better. And I think, just making sure that care workers are aware, either via ourselves or through their employer, of other organisations that can support. I think there's a lot of support out there, but it's like you said, John, it's not countrywide. It depends, a bit of a postcode lottery.
John, I'd be interested to hear your point of view on this. What do you think the public's opinion of social care is?
Well, they thought they were marvellous during COVID because they banged pots and pans. Then, when COVID sort of moved on, they then got a lot of negative press with things like people working jobs that were low skilled. But when you actually look at a care worker's job, it's actually very highly skilled. I think the public perception is probably led by popular media. I've been to various events and I've always said at some point everyone's going to need a carer, whether through illness, old age or circumstance, whatever. And you're only one episode away from having that happen. So I would say I think I'll use the term PR. I don't think care workers have a very good press because they're perceived in popular media, I think, as being something which, is automatic, and it's not. I feel that the perception of care workers is one that is misunderstood, and I think if anybody spent 24 hours doing the care role that a lot of people do, I think they'd be imagining people should be on a massive wage increase and much better terms and conditions and a lot better sick pay and things like travel expenses. I went into care because it was the only career I could do, so I could still work. And that for me was life-changing. I didn't want to be someone that didn't work, but for a lot of people they don't have a choice and they end up doing things, many hours, working in very difficult jobs. So I would say I think people perhaps might take a while to understand that care work is more of a vocation than a job, it's a calling.
Definitely. Cath, Daina, anything you think? What's your opinion of how the public see the care sector?
I mean, it's really sad to know that there is this such a negative viewpoint within the care sector. I can only echo what John has said, and I had the privilege of working with some amazing care workers. I don't think what people realise is that when an individual goes into hospital and they've had the medical treatment and then they are discharged, the aftercare is so important, right? We don't have a doctor or a nurse that comes in to do the aftercare. And there are a lot of families that struggle, especially seeing a loved one in such a vulnerable state. You need that extra support, and I think care workers don't just start and stop with the individual that they're looking after. They extend themselves to support the families as well, and I think that gets missed. It gets overlooked, and it's a professional skill set. John is absolutely right. Not everyone can do it. Even you, Pete, you said it's not catered for everyone, and I really like the fact when you said that it's a calling. It is a calling, and it's a role that should be taken seriously. It's a role that should actually be admired. I would wish to have a lot more educational institutions give the opportunity for students to do work experience as a care worker. Let them get into society and understand what this service provides. I think that's where practical education can help. And maybe the younger generation can have a different perception on the care sector rather than us just focusing on what the current perception is from certain people.
I'd agree with you on that, if you don't mind me interrupting. Some of the most inspirational workers I've worked with have been younger members that have come in with new ideas, new skills. They've looked at things with a new pair of eyes, and they've revolutionised workplaces, and they're new entries to the career field. And I think that's something that care needs to be presented as a career. It's not just something you do because you can't do anything else. There's an amazing structure you can follow through. The organisation that I've been involved with says you can go from the ground floor up to being the chief executive. They do encourage you to do training. They encourage you to think outside of the box, bring your ideas and inspiration. And I think that's something that a lot of education institutions could perhaps push along with other career paths. It's not for everybody, but perhaps people have never considered it, and I think in the positive role model that a care worker could present, perhaps that's something that could be pushed further down the line, that it is a career and it is a lifetime.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, like you say, on what the role actually is. And I think bringing young people in, and like Daina said, maybe going into schools and letting them know that there is a career path there and the skill set that's needed to do that. I think, just raising that profile, I think is really important.
I'd love to see Well, actually, I think if I think back when I was at school, and I know I don't look old enough, but that you're talking 30, 25, 30 years ago, social care, no one ever talked about social care. That was never taught about that. There was never life skills. You're not taught anything, but saying, actually, when you do your work experience, there was never anything there. And my sister-in-law, she's a teacher. Her school, they take the students into the care homes around them, so the students can experience it. And this is a primary school going in, and I think we need more of that. Let's engage them. The people that we support have got some amazing stories to tell, and let them share those with the younger generation would be amazing for me. Let them see all the amazing work that the people like John do in those care services, and get them buzzed about being in care and going, actually, I'd really like to do that.
I think you've actually got something there. I think a lot of young people are actually carers already, be it young carers for older relatives or younger siblings. And I think a lot of the skills and perceptions and things that they do, probably today, with people's situations, they probably are doing a caring role and perhaps, don't realise it. So I do think it's an education requirement to spread the fact that care is a major career field, and a lot of skills that people already have they can bring and share them.
Amazing. So again, it kind of leads us on. What do you think good care looks like?
I think it's when you go in, you look forward to where you're going. You have a sense of humour that you share. I learn something new every single day. When something happens, it's not a crisis, it's a challenge. And there's always tomorrow to sort out the problems that occur today. And when you go home, you think, well, perhaps I could do something a bit different tomorrow to bring with me something that can enhance someone's existence, life, or the way in which the quality of their experience of each day could be added to. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, when my relative was in a care home, I think the one thing that just made such a big difference was the personal touch. She liked 2 tea bags in a cup of tea, things like that, where people went out that extra mile just to make sure that she felt happy and secure. And as a family, we were so impressed with the personal touch that it made such a big difference.
No, I totally agree with what both of you have said. I think good care should feel non-judgmental. I think it's really about restoring a sense of dignity to someone who is in an incredibly vulnerable situation and reducing that feeling of being overwhelmed.
I love all of those. I love the personal touch. We recently found out that my wife is having twins, and my wife's grandparents are in a care home up the road from us, and we were in there, and we this is when we were telling them, and they were straight away going round to all the carers, and all of a sudden the carers wanted to see the scans, and they were trying to guess boys or girls, and they're all placing bets, going, I reckon it's this, I think it's this, I think it's this, and they're having conversations. So when my wife turned round and said it's twin boys, they were like, oh, you got it right, oh, I didn't get it right, because they remembered it. So I think that having that personal touch of doing things like that, and when we walk in there now, they're, how are you doing, how are you feeling, how are the boys going, and they remember you as a family member. But her grandparents love it there because of it's very personal. They have friends there, they do activities, they can go to church, they have the pets come in, they have the children come in. So it's so personal to them that they really, they don't feel like they're in a care home, they feel like they're at home.
Yeah.
They feel included.
Yes, and it's a home for them. It's somebody's home. It's not a workplace, really. It's a home from home.
Definitely. I think you've just hit the nail on the head there, John. It's not... that maybe people walk past and go, oh, look at that, that's a place to work. That's not. That is someone's home. That's where they're living. That's where they spend 24 hours, 7 days a week, some of them, that's their home, and you're a guest. Even though you're employed by the care home, you're a guest in their home, effectively. Amazing. So my final question is something we like to ask everybody, is what makes you flourish? Who's going to take this one first?
I'm quite happy to answer that one. What makes me flourish is not being hemmed in by the same routine all the time. And someone in my organisation would say, "Well, this is a problem, this is an issue, this is an idea. What can you do about it?" And then being given freedom to try and come up with some way to alter something, find something, work something out, get something sorted. That sort of challenge is sort of something I thrive on, and I enjoy thinking outside of the box, and enjoy finding things I didn't know existed, or ways of doing things that I didn't know, and sort of educate myself to do them. So being given the scope to do things for people I work with and the people I care for, I think is something that sort of has driven me on to do lots of different things that perhaps I wouldn't have done in another setting. So I think it comes down to the culture of where you work, and the faith that the company, the management and your work colleagues have in you, and also the people you support, because they rely on you. At the end of the day, that's why we do the job. So I would say that sort of challenge makes me flourish.
Amazing. I'd just like to say, John, I think you are someone I would love to work with. Everything you said, I think where's John working? Because I want to go work there now, and I want to go on a shift with John.
We've probably got time to do it now, but over the years, I've developed loads of different things, and one of the things was a community food bank. During COVID, when people were struggling, and I did that for 3 years until health issues meant that I couldn't drive anymore. But that sort of helped people in the community, people that were in the service, and people I work with. And that sort of led me on to getting funding to do things like a sensory garden and help get a piece of wasteland turned into a community area, not just for the people that we support, but the people that live in the area. And it sort of really brought together a good community cohesion. And things like that. So it's sort of the attitude at my workplace is, if you've got an idea, go with it. And they've been very encouraging, and they're a very supportive company, a very supportive management structure. So I don't see care workers as being static. I think they're very dynamic and reactive. And the people I work with have been very supportive and have sort of like made amazing things happen. So, yeah.
Amazing. Daina, Cath, what makes you flourish?
I would say it's the people around me, whether that's my parents, sister, friend, colleagues, individuals like John. They all play a part in keeping me grounded and helping me flourish.
Amazing.
I guess for me, following on from you saying about the twins, I'm actually a triplet mum, so it can be quite challenging and chaotic, and but that family connection just keeps me grounded, gives me so much joy. Everything we do obviously is for the kids, so that makes me flourish.
Amazing. Well, thank you all. This has been so enlightening. It's been amazing. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all today. I think we could have gone on for ages more and had more discussions and more questions. So you never know, maybe in the future we can get you both back on and we can discuss things even further. But thank you all very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.